So let's start off. Jim, tell us about yourself.
My name is Jim Dolbear, and the reason I'm here is that I started working with David Hsieh, who's a cryptographer who's known for inventing electronic cash, but he's also probably the leading voting security guy in the world. And he and I did a bunch of work around voting in 2000 through 2007. And about 2 years ago, we formed a company called Elixir, based on some work that David had started about 4 or 5 years ago. And we have a full stack blockchain that uses a different consensus and security approach, and also includes a mix based on some of the work that David had done in mixed networks, so we can provide privacy but also process payments and messages and data transfer at really high rates of speed, big volume, with very low latency.
Awesome, man. How'd you get into space?
So what happened was Dave and I had been working together for a very long time, and when Bitcoin started to heat up, people would call him and ask him to comment, and so he would tell me, like, you know, I have nothing to say because I know the limitations of the approach, because a lot of it, the crypto, is based on things I've done, and I'm intimately familiar with the weaknesses of it, and I don't know what to do to fix it. So I'm just going to stay on the sidelines. And that went on for a couple of years. And in 2014, an academic consortium implemented some work he'd done, and we figured out that, you know, we thought we could add some value and help, and that's when we came back into the space.
Cool, man. And then so Sean, you know, who are you, buddy? What do you do? How'd you get into space?
Hey, I'm Hsieh. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Concrete. We're out here based in Seattle, and thanks, Jonathan, for having us out here. This is an awesome event, always is. So we're focused on bringing private commercial real estate investing and making that accessible to the everyday investor for as low as $1. Our thesis around this has been mobile first, focusing on millennials, Gen Z, the digital natives, bringing them a mobile first investing experience where there's liquidity baked into everything that they're doing. So kind of bring all the promises around asset tokenization on multiple layers of commercial real estate.
Cool. When'd you get into space?
I got into the space in 2017. I was working on selling my last company, which is also Seattle-based. So I started diving into this when, of course, it was like ICO madness. I was like, what is all this stuff going on over here, as I was stepping out and working on the transaction. And just started diving in head first. And I think, like a lot of us in this room, it felt like a rabbit hole that never ended. I came out of it, took a nice breath of air, started talking with my now co-founder Rui over there around what can we do with blockchain, around commercial real estate. How do we actually leverage this technology for some good?
Cool, man. Yan, tell us about yourself.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Jan Stavisski from Litoken, Director of BD for US. So we're a top 20 utility and security token exchange. We're doing about 200 million volume daily trading volume. Last year, we were doing about 10 to 12. So it gives you an idea how fast we've grown. We focused a lot on listings and partnerships, me personally, and we have a huge US base. That's the majority of our user base. So I'm here in the US, focus a lot on the West Coast, listings and partnerships. Work with the exchange, primarily because I like to network with a lot of people in the blockchain space. I'm super interested in what people are doing. And there's a lot of innovation, so I want to be at the forefront of it.
Cool. What year did you get into space?
I got in about 2012. I heard about Bitcoin, and somebody told me it was like a game or something, an online game. So I decided to buy some Bitcoin.
Still kind of is.
It is still a game, and I dropped it for about 4 years. Checked back in 2016, and I had about, like, the couple of Bitcoin I bought looked pretty good. So I decided to get in space.
So now you're in it for life. Awesome.
That's right.
Cool. And then for people that don't know me, my name is Robert Beadles, Christian father, husband. That's my kid over there with the Monarch shirt. So one of the largest construction service providers in California. Got like 70 locations up and down the state. Own a software company, build stuff for like the government. Then we created Monarch, which is I think the world's best cryptocurrency wallet, and all-in-one platform. And then we have a YouTube channel that we started for friends and family. Now we're one of the top 5 in the world for crypto. So a lot of cool stuff. But love the space. Got in 2011. A guy named Max Kaiser, for people that know, Max. He's got a lot of awesome views and some controversial, but he opened my eyes to Bitcoin back then, and I haven't been able to close them. So love me some crypto. Speaking about crypto, a lot of people, I don't know if you guys see this on TV, like if you guys watch Blacklist, I don't know if you guys saw, Blacklist, James Spader, all that. Anyways, you see like this negative sentiment towards crypto. Like they had this crypto banker episode where it's just used for, the dark web. It's just, for nefarious acts and things like that. And everybody in this room knows that that's not the case. Just like the internet, how it was just for porn, and it was just for, bad people, illicit actors, all that kind of stuff. I think everybody here knows that there's super, value behind blockchain and crypto. So knowing that, with this panel of experts we have up here, what do you guys think? I mean, as far as we could talk about utility tokens, but I think people really, their eyes are starting to open to security tokens, where you can take something from the physical world and basically digitize it, right? So where do you think like the biggest, opportunities are, especially for you, Sean, because this is kind of like your realm, right? So maybe talk a little bit about security tokens, the benefits, and some of the, I guess some of the issues with it.
Yeah, so when we talk about security tokens inside Concrete, we look at it in many different layers. There's security tokens in which, there's tokens that are classified as securities. There's asset-backed tokens, and where we play is really asset tokenization. And that's, taking something that's physical and converting it and showing sort of ownership equity value inside of a token, and building automation around, transfers and other sort of regulatory matters, or even handling distributions. So I think there's that space. I think there's a lot of sort of untapped potential there. It's very nascent. There's a lot of people kind of running into that space right now, and I think there's a lot of regulatory work to be done before everything kind of unlocks. So I think that as a market is huge. I think all the work around digitalization of any sort of asset right now is really untapped in terms of what does that mean? How does that change behaviors as people think about either investing or being able to even claim ownership of assets?
What do you think like the biggest hurdle is to like, basically liquidity, right? Because that's a huge issue with all these tokens, right? Money, right? So what are you saying with the liquidity part of it?
Yeah, so liquidity is fun. I think when people talk about asset tokenization, there's the dream of liquidity, and I think that's what everyone is promising. Liquidity, to me, requires a lot of things. You have to have a large enough market. You have to have enough participants and enough demand for liquidity to actually be there. So trying to sell your ownership is not the hard part. It's finding the buyer to actually buy what you have. Like, I think that's the biggest challenge. So that's where I think there's a lot of barriers of entry right now in terms of hurdles that we need to kind of cross over to get to that point.
So Jan, with the LA token, maybe talk about that.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off that a little bit. At La Token, we already started listing security tokens. We're doing security token offerings for projects that want to sell their security tokens outside of the U.S., outside of China, other jurisdictions. But it's a two-sided equation, because can we see liquidity if there's not enough projects, for example, on the exchange, that are doing security token offerings? And again, with the barriers of entry to be able to participate in security token offerings, are there enough people to do it? So perhaps we're going to see liquidity, kind of like Sean said, if those barriers become a little bit less than what they are right now, and are there good enough projects for people to want to cross those barriers and be able to participate in security token offerings. So that's kind of the question right now. And will we see it in the next year? I don't know, but we're working to find out.
So that kind of, with Jim, so you've basically built your company outside of the U.S. Kind of, he was talking about barriers of entry. So we're talking regulation, right? We're talking about Uncle Sam. We're talking about the government, right? The Fed, right? So you've kind of stayed out of the U.S. You want to talk about some of the problems you've had and maybe ways?
Well, maybe I just, one of our early investors is a big Korean financial services company. And the reason they kind of keyed in on us is that they felt that we could provide a consumer platform in Southeast Asia as the middle class comes online. And it's straightforward in some sense. You have people who are families that are, for the first time ever in their history, have some excess money, and what are they going to do with it? They buy life insurance, put it away for education or for retirement, and that's never happened before. And because it's happening right about now, it's on the smartphone. So like in the United States, when I was growing up, there were these banks, and you drive when my family drove across the country, every small town you drive in, there'd be these big banks with granite. That's not going to happen. There aren't going to be big banks. There isn't going to be physical money. There aren't going to be big vaults. What there's going to be is networks that have security and smartphones that have user interface so that people can come online, if you will, financially, just like everyone in America did. And it's a big market. If you know any of the demographics, say in Indonesia, there's a lot of people, and there's a big middle class, and that's really what's going on. So when people say like blockchain is a scam, and pieces of it definitely are, but the idea that there isn't something fundamental going on here that's real is kind of crazy. And for us, a lot of it is happening outside the United States because the United States is a more mature economy and a more mature society. It's as simple as that. So for us to kind of like struggle with U.S. regulations when the market is outside the United States seemed a little crazy. So we're raising money offshore. We have a Cayman Islands entity through a Reg S offering because it matches our market approach as well.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. has a huge market here. So what's it going to take for you to come back? To
come
home?
Yeah. No, I mean, everything will get sorted out in the United States. So it's just that we're small enough. We have about 20 people, and we blow a lot of money we blow enough money already on lawyers. Let me put it that way. So we have to kind of just wait until things get sorted out here, which won't be too long, I don't think.
Gotcha. I had my timer on my phone, but I can't read it. So how much time do we got? We got. You have about 9 minutes. All right. So I can keep asking questions, but it'd be great to get some people out here because we got a lot of smart people out here. So who's got some questions for the panel up here? What do you get? No question. There we go. All right.
Wait.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all. The tokenization of assets and then moving those tokens into sort of like La Token. How does that work in terms of any appreciation of the asset, communication of the asset rights, shareholder or the owner's rights or the holder's rights, and how does LA Token, if they're participating in something like that, communicate that then to the person or accept those rights themselves?
It's a very good question. Unfortunately, it would be something more for our legal team. I don't personally work with the tokenization team, so.
I'll chime in a little bit just because we're kind of in that space, and I don't know enough about the how it's all handled on the exchange side. I can only speak about what I've seen in sort of the markets that we're in. Around asset tokenization, the way we view it right now is it's a mechanism that replaces your paper security or a digital share with a lot more capabilities inside of it. So that is representation of rights. As a token holder, it's kind of, hey, I sit in this class of shares. I have X amount, and that's the amount of tokens that you have. And then in terms of actual transferring it to us, it would work the same way that you transfer anything else in the blockchain. You choose an address, and I would imagine it would be an exchange address that you'd move it into to then bring it into do an exchange, and then there's a whole bunch of regulations when that get applied when you're dealing exchanges. So T0, for example, from what we've seen, is credit investors only, so you go through KYC, ML accreditation process as well. So that's kind of how you're managing identities as well. And I really do hope that long term there's a better way to do it, because anytime you do want to bring it in for some liquidity optionality, if you're not doing a direct transfer or anything like that, then you got to go through that process. It's painstaking.
I'd also just chip shot in that the administrative and technical details of establishing ownership and transferring ownership and tracking ownership actually kind of pale in light of like establishing value and liquidity. And that's true in mature markets here. It's like, what is a share of Apple stock worth? That's the interesting question. That the share and the legal transfer of it is pretty trivial at this point. So there's a huge amount of information that's provided by third parties around all these tokens, and that will be more and more true. And then there needs to be significant liquidity in a market so that a market can digest that information and create a value. It's just like it's always been, really.
Who else has got something?
So I've got a question, Brock Freeman. Any of you can answer it. Last year, we saw a couple of deals that were real estate asset-backed tokens that were put out there. This year, I think there's been a few. One of the biggest was St. Regis, and that garnered a lot of media attention because of the size of it and the success of it, so to say. However, it almost seems like it's kind of slowed down. I haven't seen any more news about it. And I know predictions are hard and nobody really wants to make them, but can you maybe talk about perhaps why that's the case and what's going to need to happen to see that really start to get some traction in the marketplace and really see a lot more real estate or asset-backed real estate deals, which seem perfectly suited for blockchain-based smart securities or tokens?
Well, yeah, I'll take a first crack at that. So I think from what we've seen in terms of these larger deals, I mean, they were great when they came out. There was a huge amount of marketing splash and attention towards it because it was like, here you go, here's this building, we're going to tokenize this thing, and then we're going to sell it. I think the challenging thing right now that's been affecting a lot of companies and tokens in the space has really just been the bear market. And that's really kind of pulled back confidence in terms of investing into the space. Not only that, but then when you take a look at how these security tokens are being managed, I think there's a lot of things that the issuers, frankly, don't have control over right now. So a lot of these mechanisms are still being figured out. It's relatively nascent in terms of how this works. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the tokens reissued with new code, new technology, and that's kind of a weird behavior for a lot of people that are used to just investing in something and going, hey, I'm good. Right now, you're going to get an email saying, "So check your wallet because we're going to send you, your new Vision token, and then et cetera." So it kind of conforms to the challenges of software and us having to iterate that time and time again. But what I would say to where this goes and kind of how I'm hoping all this kind of pans out is that as more people become interested in it, you're going to see more market participants, and then what's going to happen is you're going to have more options. And I think like what you were saying, you really can't have a market unless there's more optionality and there's enough interest there. And I think driving that level of engagement to build that up in terms of having a true audience is really going to bring and help people achieve liquidity long term.
Yeah, I think a lot of it too is regulation, right? When you talk to different attorneys, when you talk to different broker dealers, there's still a lot of questions. They're hoping they do things right. They're not really sure. You talk to one attorney, he says one thing. You talk to another attorney, he says another thing. So people kind of get scared. And then with the bear market, then they're really freaking out. So
yeah,
I see a lot of that.
The other thing I'd say, the good news about real estate is tokenized real estate is the real estate's real. Like you point out, it's real. The bad news is that means that there are real estate assets in cities all over the world. And if you happen to be a middle-class person in some country, you have no idea what those cities are and where. So you've created a challenge where you have to actually understand all these real estate markets. That's not the case, say, with Bitcoin, which is one thing everywhere in the world. So I think it'll take a little bit of time for those markets to mature.
I'll piggyback off of that a little bit. I see firsthand a lot of very promising projects, real estate, finance, healthcare. It doesn't really matter. In the bear market, especially with regulation coming in, not because there's any specific regulations, but simply that there's a lot of projects that raise a lot of money. Now they're dealing with a lot of legal issues. It simply scared a lot of people out of the market, even with promising projects. But right now, similar to what happened in like 2014, 2015, it seemed like projects were never going to get funded again. Everything was going to go south. We're seeing that pick back up again, and something like we see with IEOs, a lot more money coming back in. And the more interest that comes in, there's going to be more focus on figuring out regulation, whether it's in the U.S., whether it's not, and picking things back up. So I think it's going to take time, maybe a year, maybe a little bit longer. But I personally see the interest coming back in and projects getting back into the speed of things.
Cool. Well, we got about 42 seconds left. So what's your guys' thoughts on ICOs? Are they coming back? Or are they dead? Or something else going to take their place? STOs? Or does ICOs have a chance whatsoever of coming back whatsoever here in the U.S.?
In the U.S., I think not in the short term. Not in the short term. I personally see a lot of projects that were in the U.S. leave the U.S. And go to places like Malta or Cayman, Estonia, Singapore, and a lot of those that stayed are focusing on security tokens. Those I don't see any serious liquidity like we saw with ICOs in 2019, but I see that in the next couple of years. Those that left, I'm seeing them still raising money. I'm still seeing traction. I don't think they're going to die completely, and I think there's still a market going to be out there.